Hi everyone, in this video I would like to talk to you about assessing and evaluating reading comprehension. Well, first we need to have some important considerations in mind. So how do we actually go about assessing reading comprehension? First we need to decide on the skills, strategies that are to be dealt with, examine the text to be used, and selecting the most appropriate type of activity item to be designed. In other words, this means that you need to consider what content, what skill, specific skill for reading you're going to be assessing, and analyze the possible text, analyze the structure of the text, and see if it lends itself to a particular item type that you can design. We are going to look at some types of items or activities for assessing reading comprehension. We have a technique called same different. It's actually very basic. It's also known as word matching or sentence matching, or the odd one out, depending on the complexity of the graphic information displayed. You may see that this seems to be very simple. It's just identifying whether these two words are the same or different, but this is something you find regularly in language assessment books. You need to remember that you may have to teach Asian students who need to learn a completely new, different alphabet. So this may seem simple for us because we use the same alphabet both in English and in Spanish. But for someone whose alphabet is not Latin, this can be very challenging. So this is something that you could try if you ever teach Asian students. Also, this is something you can try if you have a student who suffers from dyslexia. This could be a helpful exercise, so they train their eyes and start recognizing similar words in terms of spelling. We have picture cues, so picture and sentence matching. In this case we have a picture and we need to complete a statement based on the choice that makes it correct. It's not very efficient in terms of space. It's just a whole picture. It's just a statement and the choices, but it's also a possibility. Of course, you need to use a clear image, otherwise it may be subject to interpretation. This is a traditional item type, true false. We have an important note here. This is not something you could include on a test if you're working in a public institution. You can only use those item types that are described in la prueba escrita. Still, you could use this as practice in class. Remember, students may encounter this kind of item when they go to the university. There's a way to improve the reliability of this item type, and that's by adding a third category. So in addition to true, false, we may have not mentioned or impossible to tell. If it's something not mentioned, you include something that is completely unrelated to the topic of the reading. If it's impossible to tell, that could be a very, very specific inference that cannot be verified based on the evidence found in the text. So we have an example of true-false item with a third category, not mentioned. I have tried this and, well, my students hate it because they have to think. Instead of dealing with a 50-50 chance of getting the right answer, now they have a third one and they really have to think, okay, how do we know whether this is true, false, and not mentioned? And also students need training to recognize any of these choices. If it's true, it's something that is already said in the text. It's probably paraphrased, used, it is expressed in different words. If it's false, it is somehow contradictory. If it's not mentioned, it's absolutely not there. So they need to be able to identify what is and what is not in a reading excerpt. We have multiple choice items. That's another traditional item type. It's a versatile type of item. You can test reading comprehension of short sentences, paragraphs, whole texts. You must be careful when designing this kind of item to avoid ambiguity, weak distractors, and obvious answers. Just an example. This you may be very familiar with this type of item. Yeah, completion items. We're dealing with short answer. So in this kind of item, you can have students complete charts, unfinished statements, summaries with blanks, and so on. We have a completion exercise. This is for reference. This is also a basic reading skill. For example, we have she. Well, what does she refer to? We have once. What does this word refer to? And so on. We need to be able to identify this in a reading, and sometimes that's quite challenging for our students when they read. They see a lot of it, and they fail to recognize what it means in the text. We can have a short answer item set as a chart, and some helpful advice here is to give away some of the answers so students recognize the structure of the text and the kind of answers they need to provide, whether they are words or phrases. You can look at the rhetorical organization of the reading. We can have a diagram. It's very important for diagrams, charts, formats like this to be in the order that the information appears in the reading. Otherwise, that poses an additional challenge, and it would be invalid because you may be testing memory instead of reading comprehension. So whenever you have something like this, or in general any kind of reading task, reading item, the questions, statements, whatever should be in the order that the information appears in the reading. We have concept maps as well. See, some answers are given away as guidance for the students. By the way, how are concept maps different from other kinds of diagrams? Well, the main difference lies in the use of linking words. In a diagram, we just have lines and arrows and shapes, whereas in concept maps we have linking words in between, so everything can be read as a statement. We could also use outlines. In this case, we have all the phrases that are to be used in this item, in this outline, and of course this is based on a paragraph or a set of paragraphs. And once more, you need to look at the rhetorical organization of the text in order to design the outline. We may have rearrangement items. However, this kind of item must not be used in tests of our public educational system. However, rearranging summary sentences of a text can be a good reading comprehension exercise. So you have an example. Students have to arrange these statements chronologically from 1 to 4, and there are two ideas that are not found in the text. So they are to be marked as not applicable. This is not allowed on a test because this may make students rely on memory, so we may have an issue of validity. However, this is something you could do as formative practice in class. We have close and fill in the blanks. Again, this would fit within a short answer. Okay, close can be used for diagnostic assessment, while fill in the blanks can be used for teaching and evaluative purposes. Depending on the skills to be tested or trained, the text type and the student's background, a word bank can be included in a fill in the blank exercise. Okay, we have a close exercise. Okay, how is close different from fill in the blanks? In close, we delete words systematically. One recommendation is to leave the first lines as introduction, so students know what the text is about, and then you start deleting words systematically. So if you see here, there is a pattern. You count 1, 2, 3, 4 blank, 1, 2, 3, 4 blank, 1, 2, 3, 4 blank, and so on. There's the pattern of deleted words. In fill in the blanks, we decide what words to delete. In close, we may delete any kinds of words, prepositions, nouns, verbs, and so on. We need to be careful because the smaller the number we use, the more challenging the close exercise becomes. We have limited response or restricted response and open-ended questions. So a wide range of general reading comprehension, essay, and reader response questions can be written to test students' understanding of a text. So you have a limited or restricted response item. Remember, whenever you assign more than 1 point to something, it needs to be justified. So in this case, you have what results did researchers obtain in the first and second sets of trials conducted in the 2009 study, 2 points. So first trials, results, 1 point. Second trials, results, 1 point. See what health benefits do bilinguals have over monolinguals, 1 point. Just mentioning one among many benefits will give them the point. We have an open-ended item as part of a reading cycle. This is also important to see if students can go beyond the text and develop some critical thinking. We may also consider using summarizing and paraphrasing, but we need to be careful because this may depend on the students' abilities to summarize and paraphrase more than they are able to understand the text. So we may be assessing a different skill, so we may have a validity issue here, so we need to be careful with this. We may consider as well reversing roles. We normally have our students answer questions or do certain activities based on a text, but we could instead ask them to write their own questions and design their own reading comprehension activities and assess one another. So they could work in groups, and each group could exchange their questions or reading activity, and they can test one another. We may also exploit creativity. If we want to tell our students understood the content of a reading, we can ask them to draw, role play, prepare posters, write an alternate ending if it's a short story, play games, and so on. And we can also use technology. It is not necessary to reinvent the wheel in the teaching and testing of reading comprehension. Some pieces of technology can make reading activities more appealing to students. I have a sample here. It is online. So we're going to take a look at this exercise. It's something I designed with a tool called Excel Learning. So we have the introduction, we have general instructions. If students click here, they will see the reading. It is in PDF. It is set in 2 columns because it is a recommendation. If we work with 2 columns, then phrases are shorter and students' eye movements are going to be shorter, so that's going to make reading easier for most of them. If we go back to the activities, we have a menu here. We have predicting, and we can use traditional item type formats. For example, true, false. In this case, impossible to tell. We're adding a third category. So if they mark here, they get immediate feedback. You have an item and parts of speech with the drop-down menu. They just select, click on check. This is also drop-down menu. You have statements that need to be arranged chronologically. And this is will be a short answer. They need to complete the blanks and check their answers. Once more, true false not mentioned in this case. They just need to write a letter here and a pause reading question just for reflection. And there are many other tools that you can try, and you're probably familiar with them, such as Kahoot. And here are our references.